So when you learn a new vocabulary, you probably sit down and you write all your vocabulary on a flashcard, right? You write bed on one side and then la cama on the other side, right? And then what you do is you put all those words in a pile, and then you look at it in English. Bed. How do I say bed in Spanish? La cama. Boom, I got it. So that's cute. That's real cute. But baby, that means absolutely nothing. That means you sat there and you flipped the cards over back and forth till you memorized it. And now you memorize these flashcards. But the next day, you probably gotta do the same thing again. And then when it comes down to it, and you need to use la cama in a sentence, you have no idea. Because all you did was remember how to translate it from Spanish to English. That's all you remembered. You remembered how to do it when it's right in your face, so you're repeating it over and over again. But you never took that word la cama and applied it to a sentence. You didn't go to Bed Bath & Beyond, or where they sell beds. You didn't go to Macy's Furniture and was like, hola, buenos, necesito la cama por mi apartamento. Yo tiene la cama en gris or blanco. You just sat there and said la cama, la cama, la cama back and forth to yourself. So that's what we're not gonna do. We're not just gonna sit down and write words on flashcards and try to remember them by memory. That's not gonna help you use it in real life. Which leads me to how I'm going to actually use the flashcards. So this is what we're going to do. And I take a look at the words that I'm going to focus on from this vocabulary list. I am not going to sit here and try to memorize all of these vocabulary words in a couple of days because it's fucking pointless. I'm going to read out all of the words and think what is going to be necessary for me to learn right now. Like, of course, one day I would love to learn all these, but it's not important to learn all of them if I'm not going to use them anytime soon. You see where I'm going with this? So I like to sit and I like to read the words out loud to myself. This way I'm able to hear myself speak Spanish, and I'm able to, on the spot, see how I need. Alright, I sat down and I said the words. I needed to hear myself say the words, and I definitely tripped up on a whole bunch of words. So we're going to start with this list, and I picked out a couple of words that I feel like are going to be super important for me to learn right now, because I see myself using these words in regular conversation on a regular basis, so I'm going to focus on those vocabulary words. Por ejemplo, I don't see myself using the word attic anytime soon. Most places don't have attics. I live at home with my dad, but before I lived in an apartment for 5 years, I never had an attic. I don't use the word attic in English in regular conversation. So that's not a word that's on the top of my list. So we're going to scratch that word out. So another word, bungalow. When do I even use that word in English? Probably never. So I'm not going to add that to the list. So one that's not a very common word, which is library, biblioteca.
Biblioteca.
Alright, so one word, biblioteca, which is library in English. You may not need this word, but I go to the library every week because I enjoy going out of my house to get out of the house to get some work done. So I'm going to challenge myself to make this word a priority. Alright, so now it's time to make my flashcards, and I like to use what I call the taboo method. So the board game Taboo, right? How the game goes is you have a word on your card, and you have to try to get your team members to guess what that word is without using the 5 words that are on the card to describe it. So I'm going to use that, but kind of like the opposite. So what I like to do is I like to write the word that I need to guess, that I need to memorize on the back of the card with the English word in parentheses. And then in Spanish, Spanglish, how many Spanish words I know, try to write sentences or phrases that describe what that word is in Spanish. I already know what this word is. This is a new word for me today, but I'm going to use that as an example. So I'm going to write on one side, el apartamento in Spanish, and I'm going to use examples of Spanish and English on how to describe el apartamento. So, por ejemplo, I'm going to use kind of ask myself questions to kind of give myself clues. So one thing I'm going to say, where does your dog live? So I'm going to put that on the flashcard. Where does my dog live? Another example, I'm going to say, you pay rent here. And then I'm going to give 2 examples in Spanish. So I'm going to put dos dormitorios, dos baños. So, where does your dog live? You pay rent here. And then in Spanish, dos dormitorios y dos baños. And then más pequeña que la casa. So that gives me the idea. Oh, my dog lives here. I pay my rent here. It has 2 beds, 2 baths, and it's smaller than a house. El apartamento. So if I didn't know what this meant in Spanish, I do know what it means in English. Therefore, I can go ahead and be like, oh, so if it's an apartment in English, what is the word for apartment in Spanish? So it gives me a couple of different ways to try to figure out what the word is with sentences in Spanish and English, so that I'm not just going, okay, apartment, el apartamento, because that's not really going to help me when I need to use el apartamento in an actual sentence, or if I'm listening to it when I'm watching a movie or hearing somebody else talk about it. So the goal here is to really only make the descriptions in straight up Spanish, but if I don't know enough words in Spanish, I'm going to obviously do it in English. But this is just 2 examples on how to do it. I felt this is very, very helpful. The whole memorize it in your native language to the language you're learning, that doesn't really help much, because that's not how, like, you memorize it when it's time to read flashcards, not when it's time to use the word. So using it this way, it gives yourself familiar with describing the word and kind of getting a feeling of like words around and how it would be used in real conversation. Like how you have to use it in a way that you actually immerse it when it comes time to use the word. I hope that makes sense. This is how I do it.